Hey guys, welcome back to Click Academics. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to solve this algebraic equation. And make sure to stick to the end of the problem, where I have 3 bonus problems that are similar to this one, which you guys can try to solve. Alright, so I have x to the power of 3 plus x minus 2 is equal to 0. Now, negative 2 here, this is the same thing as negative 1 minus 1. Because a negative minus a negative, you simply add these two numbers together and just keep the negative sign. So I'm going to replace negative 2 with negative 1 minus 1. So now I have x to the power of 3 plus x minus 1 is equal to 0. Now if I switch the order of x and negative 1, I get x to the power of 3 minus 1 plus x minus 1 is equal to 0. Now 1 here, this is the same thing as 1 to the power of 3. So I have x to the power of 3 minus 1 to the power of 3 plus x minus 1 is equal to 0. Now, if I have something in the form a to the power of 3 minus b to the power of 3, this is the same thing as a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. So x to the power of 3 minus 1 to the power of 3, this is going to equal a minus b, so x minus 1 times a squared, x squared, plus x plus b squared, so 1 squared, which is 1. So now I have x minus 1 times x squared plus x plus 1 plus x minus 1 is equal to 0. So now if I factor out x minus 1 from this, I get x minus 1 times x squared plus x plus 1 plus 1. Now if I add these two together, I get x minus 1 times x squared plus x plus 1, which is plus 2, is equal to 0. So now this gives me two equations. I have x minus 1 is equal to 0, and I have x squared plus x plus 2 is equal to 0. So for x minus 1 equals 0, all I have to do is add 1 on both sides. These two cancel out, and I have x is equal to 1. Now for x squared plus x plus 2 equals 0, to solve this, I'm going to be using the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So in this case, a is equal to 1, b is equal to 1, and c is equal to 2. So I have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 2, all over 2 times a, which is 1. Now I have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared is 1, so 1. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. All over 2 times 1 is 2. And as you can see here, 1 minus 8 is equal to negative 7. So, and the square root of negative 7, well, you can't take the square root of a negative number, meaning this has no solution. So our only solution to this problem is x equals 1. Alright, so I have 4 to the power of 14 times 5 to the power of 23. Now 4 here, this is the same thing as 2 squared. So if I replace 4 with 2 squared, I get 2 squared to the power of 14 times 5 to the power of 23. Now, if I have something in the form a to the power of m to the power of n, this is the same thing as a to the power of m times n. So in this case, 2 to the power of 2 to the power of 14, that's going to equal 2 to the power of 2 times 14. And 2 times 14 is 28. So now I have 2 to the power of 28 times 5 to the power of 23. Now 28, I'm going to rewrite as 5 plus 23. Now I have this times 5 to the power of 23. Now if I have something in the form a to the power of m plus n, this is equal to a to the power of m times a to the power of n. So in this case, 2 to the power of 5 plus 23, that's going to equal 2 to the power of 5 times 2 to the power of 23. Now I have this times 5 to the power of 23. Now, if I have something in the form a to the power of m times b to the power of m, this is the same thing as a times b to the power of m. So in this case, 2 to the power of 23 times 5 to the power of 23, because these two terms have the same exponent, I can rewrite this as 2 times 5 to the power of 23. So now 2 times 5, that's going to equal 10. So now I have 2 to the power of 5 times 10 to the power of 23. Now 2 to the power of 5, that's simply equal to 32. So I have 32 times 10 to the power of 23. And now 32, I'm going to rewrite as 3.2 times 10 to the power of 1, because I'm going to put this in scientific notation form. So now if I have something in the form a to the power of m times a to the power of n, this is equal to a to the power of m plus n. So 10 to the power of 1 times 10 to the power of 23, that's going to equal 10 to the power of 1 plus 23, which is 10 to the power of 24. So 3.2 times 10 to the power of 24 is our answer. All right, so I have x to the power of 4 minus 10,000 is equal to 0. Now, if I have something in the form a to the power of m times n, this is the same thing as a to the power of m to the power of n. So x to the power of 4, I'm going to rewrite as x to the power of 2 times 2. Now, because this is in the form a to the power of m times n, I can rewrite this as a to the power of m to the power of n. So I'm going to rewrite this as x to the power of 2 to the power of 2 minus 10,000 is equal to 0. Now 10,000, this is the same thing as 100 squared. So now I have x to the power of 2 to the power of 2 minus 100 squared is equal to 0. Now, if I have something in the form a squared minus b squared, this is the same thing as a plus b times a minus b. So in this case, a is equal to x squared and b is equal to 100. So I have x squared plus 100 times x squared minus 100 is equal to 0. So now this gives me two equations. I have x squared plus 100 is equal to 0, and I have x squared minus 100 is equal to 0. So let's first solve x squared minus 100 is equal to 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 100 on both sides. So then these two cancel out. I'm left with x squared is equal to 100. Now I'm going to be taking the square root on both sides. So then these two cancel out, and I'm left with x is equal to plus or minus 10. So this is two solutions to this equation. Now, for our two other solutions, for x squared plus 100 is 0, I'm going to first start by subtracting 100 on both sides. So then these two cancel out, left with x squared is equal to negative 100. Now I can take the square root on both sides. So then these two cancel out, left with x is equal to square root of negative 100. Well, the square root of negative 100, I can rewrite this as the square root of 100 times the square root of negative 1. And if you guys already know, the square root of negative 1, this is equal to the imaginary number I. So now I have x is equal to the square root of 100, I. Now the square root of 100, this is the same thing as plus or minus 10, so I have plus or minus 10i. So now, to list all our solutions, x of 1, this is going to be 10. X of 2, this is going to be negative 10. X of 3 is going to be 10i. And x of 4, this is going to be negative 10i. So these are my 4 solutions to this equation.